our bylaws. At this meeting, we ask for people to volunteer to be part of the nominating committee. The nominating committee puts together a slate of officers and board members, which is presented to the membership in March, voted on in May, and they will convene then as the new board in June. So the only requirement is that you are a member of Peace Action and you are current in your dues. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get to know people better, and you're doing a great service to Peace Action because you bring together people who are committed to the mission of Peace Action. So at this time, I would like to ask the forum we see throughout this year the work of the board. We had a wonderful forum on education. We did a Big Food Not War event virtually. We had the opportunity to hear from John Rainwater, the executive director of Peace Action National, and here we are today on this wonderful forum. So this is the work of the board. At this time, I'd like to ask for
So Eileen, while everybody's deciding to be on the nominating committee, we're going to show a little slideshow of what who our sponsors are and what we do, just as people are thinking. Okay.
And then do we have any volunteers? It's a short-term commitment. I know everybody is involved in so many things. The opportunity to do something short-term.
I think somebody, maybe Jack, is that you?
Who's that? Is that someone volunteering?
Could somebody mute their phone, please, if you have it not muted?
Have people unmuted to have to?
People could also put in chat that they're volunteering to be part of the nominating committee. We're getting some feedback.
Okay. Anybody else? What happens is you come together as a committee to do this work, and you would do it virtually. And you make suggestions, you talk about different people that you're nominating, and then, work on contacting them and setting things up. So anybody else?
Many already.
Is there anybody in the chat, Sally, that is?
Joanna said that she would be on the nominating committee.
Yes, I have Joanna.
How many people do you have on the nominating committee?
We need to have at least 5.
No, you have 5 already?
No, we don't, sir. We are we are looking for volunteers. Are you interested?
Well, I would do this, but if you've already got 5, that's enough.
No, not yet. This is David. Not yet, David. Would you like to do it?
Now that's that question. Would I like to do it? I would do it. I've done it before, and I would do it again. Whether I would like to or not is not an issue. All that to say, yes, I would do it. Yes.
Hi, Eileen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Barbara.
Okay, so I was having trouble for a minute and I can't get into the chat for some reason, but I would be glad to be on the nominating committee.
Okay.
Martha Eccles has asked you, Eileen, when can I join this organization?
Well, you can join right after the call. We have some information we can put up on the screen how you can reach us. And that would, if you're interested in being part of the committee, you can do that. Did she get the answer, Sally?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. As I said, I know everybody is very busy. They have a lot of commitments, but this really is a short commitment, and certainly it takes time and effort, but it's well worth it. It's so important. And then this forum today would not be possible if it were not for the hard work of the board. And it's great to work together as a team. Wonderful people. Two more? At least two more.
Can I make a suggestion that while people are thinking about whether they're interested in being on the nominating committee or joining Peace Action, I will tell them about this, the event at Sandy Grounds, and then we'll go back to questioning, and then we'll ask again for people to volunteer.
Okay,
Is
sounds
that okay? Okay, so I would like to mention that there's going to be an event on February 13th from 2 to 4 p.m. It's hosted by the Young Leaders of Staten Island, and it's obviously a Zoom event, not in person. And it's about rising from the ground, from the sandy grounds. And their purpose is to highlight Sandy Ground's lost history, as well as to begin a fundraiser to preserve the actual building itself. They will highlight during this presentation Black culture. There'll be artwork from members of the community. There'll be a presentation on the history of Sandy Ground, and there'll be a portion where you can submit ideas on how to raise money and how to create urgency to add the history of Sandy Grounds to the New York City school curriculum. So I hope many, if not all of you, can join this event when the Zoom information comes out, but be on the lookout for it. I think it's going to sound wonderful. And who knows, maybe the artwork will be for sale, but I think it would be great.
I think it will be a great event, and our young leaders of Staten Island are going to be presenting, and we look forward to it. Also, just briefly, yesterday was a day to celebrate the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons came into full force, and Peace Action, New York State, and other peace groups, Habakasha Stories, ICANN, Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World, and other groups came together and found a special way to thank the now 52 countries who signed the treaty. And Sally, can you just give us a brief overview of what it was about?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Oh, okay. We started a project to deliver roses and gifts to the 51 countries of the missions in New York City to the United Nations of the countries that had ratified the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And the idea came up in December, and we gathered people together in 5 Zoom planning sessions, and somehow miraculously this idea came together. And what you look at right now, the artwork was designed by Tony Sahara, who's an artist who does a lot of work with the Manhattan Project for a nuclear-free world, really creative. And somebody picked up the roses, and then we had about 2 weeks of trying to call all these missions, which was very difficult in COVID. They're very concerned about people coming to the missions. They are working from home. So we ended up, in many cases, meeting the missions, the ambassadors or councils outside or in the lobby. And in some cases, we were able to go upstairs, but we were very, very careful with socially distancing. It was an amazing experience, and they were so excited. And I see I spelled treaty wrong on this slide. Sorry about that. But it was really an amazing experience. And last Friday, a group from Rise and Resist, with the help of the Illuminators, lit up the UN Secretariat building, that big rectangle on the East River, with that nuclear weapons are illegal and other messages. And the 51 mission people saw this sign. They thought the United Nations had done it, but it was civil society. It was people like you and me who did this. It was really exciting that they were so grateful for us going to thank them. It was exciting. And Eileen and I had quite a day on Thursday, making the visits to countries. I don't know if you know of Nauru, a little tiny island in the Pacific that only has 12,000 people, but they had the courage to sign this treaty, even though the nuclear weapons states have pressured countries in the United Nations not to do it.
And the thing that impressed me too, excuse me, about the ambassadors is that they were so gracious and so appreciative of the recognition that this project, made it possible to recognize them. So, and you learn so much when you talk to them firsthand. It was a wonderful experience, as Sally said. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things, folks, that Peace Action gets involved in. These are the kinds of things you can be involved in. So Barbara, I suggest maybe go back to the questioning and people give some more thought to signing up, and we'll talk about it before we end. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Barbara, make sure you're unmuted. Yeah, unmute.
Okay, all right. Thank you all. We're going to be looking in the chat for questions. If we don't see your question, if you raise your hand, hopefully one of us, we're so good with technology, will spot your raised hand. But I do know that there was a question I saw earlier about whether there's anything for tax liens. If you have foreclosure on tax liens, either Peter or Tanuja, do you know?
I'm taking that question, and then Peter, if you'd like to add on to it. So tax liens do qualify for the foreclosure, so you do need to go to OCA website and file for hardship. I will say tax liens, though, are outside of DFS's jurisdiction, but they do qualify under the law that was signed by the governor in December.
Okay, also, I don't know if it was noticed, but Peter and Emily, your phone numbers or contact information has been requested. So maybe you could just put it in the chat so whoever was interested in it could copy it down.
Sure thing, Barbara. And I'll just add that I actually put a link to the hardship form in the chat as well. So
okay, that's good. But also, if you're willing to put your contact information in both you and Emily, that would be great. And
there was a question about utility shutoffs. Do the utility shutoffs only apply to tenants? The moratorium on utility shutoffs.
I'm not certain. So is that like a landlord who is, or is that a homeowner? Is that the question? I'm not clear. So certainly if it's, somebody who owns a one family or two family home and they're the owner, and they're at risk of a utility shut off, it would qualify for them as well.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Anybody else, any questions, or did anyone notice a question?
There was another question about the food banks that both Project Hospitality and La Colmena run. We need a little more information about them. Could we get some more information? They're looking for donations? How do people do that?
Reverend Jackson, could you speak about that, please?
Yes, I can. You can find information on all of our programs and how to contact them on our website, projecthospitality.org. Regarding donations to our food pantries, we would love donations, and you can always drop them off on Tuesday or Thursday mornings, like 9 to noon at 514 Bay Street in Stapleton. We have a Tuesday and Thursday distribution at 514 Bay Street. We have a Thursday evening distribution at 221 Heberton, a Tuesday produce distribution at 260 Port Richmond Avenue, and a mobile pantry that goes all across the island, giving out fresh fruits and vegetables.
Can I ask you if you would be willing, when you're done giving the answer orally, if you would be willing to put it in the chat?
Yeah, I'll try to see if I can put links to our flyers right in the chat box. And of course, those can be shared later as well.
Thank you. Emily, did you want to add anything to that? Okay,
Yes,
and Emily?
Yes, I'm sorry. So our food pantry is usually on Wednesdays from 12 p.m. until 2 p.m. or until we're all out of food and all the supplies that we have. Donations, we are glad to take donations Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We do keep our doors closed and we only take people by appointment. So I will be providing our office number in the chat. So if anybody wants to bring donations, just call our office number and somebody will pick up and we can pick up the donation downstairs.
Okay, so you're going to put that contact information into the chat.
I will be posting our Facebook, my personal my work email, my phone line, and our office number.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
From Linda Murphy.
We have a question. Okay, I think someone might have their phone on.
I have a question.
Okay, the person who's, okay, two things. One, if you have your phone, could you mute yourself if you're not speaking? That's my first point. And the second is the gentleman that just said, I have a question. What's the question?
Yeah, this is Neil Berry. How we doing?
Okay, how are you?
Yeah, listen, I was want to talk to Juan Fernandez from Human Rights. I'd like to ask him a question. Juan Fernandez, is he still on the call?
Oh, yes, I am still on the call.
How you doing, Juan? This is Neil.
Good. Nice to see you, Neil. Nice to see
Centering
you.
around the COVID-19 and the human rights perspective on this whole initiation of this conversation, let me ask you something. I know that globally and internationally, there's not been a response to these disparities and on a big level. What about, and I know you're just New York City and you don't have the answers to this as a government official, but what are you doing in terms of all the disparities that are being done with the human rights in terms of the housing and the COVID-19 disparities? Because there seems to be no movement, and there certainly shouldn't be any leadership that's leading in any type of form on this really devastating disparity that's happening. Because the conversation seems to be null and void about the disparity between the Black communities on Staten Island and in many of our other communities in the North Shore. So I'm kind of like interested in what are you moving in that direction? Because some of the the vaccine releases have not been equitable, and there's no conversation around that. Many of our North Shore communities have not dispersed these vaccines in an equitable manner. So I don't know if that's human rights, but I would think that healthcare is human rights, and so is housing. So how does that coordinate? Because we certainly need answers. We don't need a lot of verbatim.
Yes, that's a great question, great and complex question. As you know, we are the human rights agency within the New York City, City Hall. We are part of the New York City administration, you know. So we are one of the tools in this process. We are not the only tool. We are not the only office. You know, together here in the city, you know, we work with HPD. You know, there are programs in housing availability for people. You know, there are grant programs, but our core of our activities, the New York City Commission on Human Rights, is to represent people who have been discriminated, you know, and we're talking about housing. Yes, housing is one of the components we have. We fight in the cases of where somebody is being discriminated, kept away from housing because of their gender, race, sexual orientation, you know, and a list of about 14 protected classes. We also represent people in employment who are being discriminated for some around 20 different protected classes, and also public accommodations. In my perspective, in my personal perspective, you know, the issue of housing is a big issue, you know. We hope with the new administration we can take take all of us in the right direction, right? Affordability of housing is a big problem in the city. Before the pandemics and still now, you know, now you see a lot of offering of housings because a lot of people are practically being left out on the street, and thus empty houses are being offered at discount prices for rental purposes, you know. But that's going to be a very short-lived spring, you know, because the real problem is not going to be solved like that. All right.
But in the interest of time, I was really interested in the COVID-19 and the disparity of the vaccines. Who would that be a conversation with?
In regard, yeah, you also mentioned the disparity of the vaccine. And right now, we know that the big problem is that there is no supply available. And the mayor mentioned this, you know. We are expecting supplies coming in the city on Wednesday, and the center, the PAD center, are going to be reopened on the 28th, right? Okay. Now, the vaccine comes from the federal government. President Biden yesterday offered additional supply of vaccine, a part of the expected package that were coming. They're adding additional packages. Throughout the country, New York City is the top distributor of vaccine. Let me be clear about that. You know, are we doing the greatest of the greatest? Yeah, probably not. But the rate of distribution is 5%, 5.3%. That means that for every 100,000 people, you know, we are distributing at that rate, 5.3%. The next one in the list, you know, at the national level is Houston, right, with 3%, all right? And the rest is abysmal, you know, they're very low, 1%, 2%, even lower, you know. So we have at national level, we have a big problem here. We have a big problem. How to encourage people to do vaccination. Now, the city effort is to set up pods, right? They call it pod hubs in every borough, And they're asking for city workers to volunteers to staff the pods, because a part of having the person able to do the injection, they also need people who can process the person who are coming in, you know, take the calls, make the appointments, so there can be an orderly process. And as soon as we have the supply, and as per state order, because the city of New York only follows the state, mandate, the state mandate. Remember a couple of weeks ago, the mayor was saying the order now is 75. That was saying in the morning, 75 years of age and more. And then at midnight, at noon, by noon, the governor said, no, now it's 65. All right, so immediately we have to pedal and up the grade to that 65 years of, which is good, but we didn't have, the city didn't have the supply. Now, there is a website, www, and I'm going to write it in the chat, w1.nyc.gov, all right, COVID/COVID-19, and there you have all the information about the places where you can go and get the vaccine. The problem with the disparity is the messages. They are community, they are reticent to go ahead. I have talked to people and they say, no, I am afraid something is going to happen. We don't know. And the other day somebody mentioned, they say, oh, well, in Norway, there were 12 people who died out of the vaccine. And that's a real news. I've seen it in several different publications. Seems to be a real news. The details we don't know, but of course that creates an impact. People say, wow, this is what's happening with this. And the other vaccine is better, must be better, but the reality is we don't know what really happened in that case in Norway.
All right, thank you, Juan. I think I'm going to move on. Selena.
Okay, of course, thank you.
That's okay. Selena, I know you've had your hand raised for a while. Can you ask your question?
Yes, so thank you, everyone. This was a great informative session. And one of the things I wanted to go back to what Neil was saying, we do know that the disparities with distributing the vaccination is real. And I know that the NAACP and our president, Ed Josie, reached out to the governor's office to find out why we're not getting, why people in our communities are not the ones getting the vaccination. So we're just waiting for them to respond to us. But also, is there a place where we can go, where we can look at statistics on how many vaccinations were given in each community and the breakdown of the population? Were the people from the community getting the vaccination? Were the Black people? Were the white people? Are we able to get a breakdown of how the vaccinations were distributed within the community so we can address the disparities that exist?
If you allow me, I can say the answer is yes. And the website is let me give. I will type it in the. Okay, the website is, as I said before, www.nyc.gov/site DOH, DOH COVID. They have all the statistics, right, in regard to hospitality, where and who took the antibody testing, what is the distribution of vaccine, right? How many people have been
Juan is what was Karen Jackson just put in, if you could look at the chat, is that the website? Yes. Okay, yes. So everybody, Selena and anybody who's interested, the website has been typed in by Karen Jackson. And also, I have three people now that want to say something. So in order, I'm just going to go through in order. Mr. Crisali, is there something you wanted to say?
Yeah, it's Bob Crisali. I work for a community agency for senior citizens. I just want to point out that some seniors, based on age and income, can be exempted for any property tax liens. If you do get a notice that there's a potential lien on your property because of property tax, they are supposed to inform you as to how you can apply for the exemption when they notify you that there's a potential lien being put on it. Often people don't realize that, but I haven't done it in quite a while, so I don't remember exactly the conditions, but I think there is a specific age of 65, I believe, and a certain income level also. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nancy, Nancy Haggins, I believe you are raising your hand.
Yes, I am. I just wanted to say something with the caller in regard to the disparity. It's not so much that the people of color, because when we started rolled out, we try to go to the community. Unfortunately, there is a trust issues in our community, because when I volunteered, I noticed the people were coming to get the injection were not actually people from the community. And my thing is, you have to go online, like the previous panelist said. Not all of us have Wi-Fi, have cable to go online and register. So when you go on the website to register for the COVID-19, they'll put you anywhere there's a spot available. So that's what really hurting our community, because if I don't have email address, I'm not gonna be able to register. So we need to ask a local government a different way, to your cell phone, somebody could call you. I had issue trying to register my mother because my mother doesn't have an email address. I had to use my email address. So I believe we have to change the approach and how we vaccinate our community. We may have to get a mobile to drive around a neighborhood and just have people come out and receive the injection, because people may not be able to come to us, especially people who cannot wait online, the senior citizen and stuff. It's not so much that we don't have a hub in our community. Unfortunately, somebody could come from New Jersey, from somewhere else. As long as they register on that website, they will receive that vaccine. So it does not limit you. Well, you know, if you're not from 103 or 14, you cannot have the injection on this side. It opens for everyone. I believe that's where the problem is.
Thank you. Okay, David Polchuk, did you want to ask a question and give some information both?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. First of all, the question of emails is a really serious problem. And Nancy, you gave wonderful information, but you could use your email because you hadn't used it for yourself. So I tried to use my email to register a friend who's my age but computer illiterate. Could you get the door? And sorry, just a minute. And I found out, then I tried to use his email, which he never used, and he has to reply to it. So just a suggestion and something to share with your friends who are computer illiterate. And that is a real point of lack of equity. That's a racist and classist thing. And I was on the phone for 6 hours at different times trying to get myself on. So it's not easy to get through the phone. And I've been on all those websites because I'm somewhat at risk because we're caretakers for a 3.5-year-old. So what I did for my friend was make up a phony email, and that didn't work because I had put it as information already. So I would say, but then I realized that his son must have set up his email for him, and I finally got his password and did it for him. So I would say make up a phony email for a friend, a new one, if they don't have it, so you can, someone who's computer illiterate. And that's something we should go around and ask people to help friends do. The second thing is, I waited 3 hours in the cold. Old people left. I'm old, but I could hack that because I walk the dog and I know what to wear. 3 hours outside at Port Richmond. The elderly, people who are at risk, people who are having problems, and that was in the cold, by the way, on Wednesday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon, I'm sorry. So I don't think there is equity. And Cuomo got on and said, wow, we have enough. We just don't have enough. We have enough places. If you had enough places, I wouldn't have had to wait 3 hours. We have lots of friends who still haven't managed to find a place. And people who are going to the good hospitals are getting letters that if you're under treatment by them, we'll get it for you. But the people who are going to city hospitals aren't getting those letters. So that's another point of a human rights issue of the equity. How do you address that, Juan?
Juan, I don't know what, I'm not sure whether David meant that sort of rhetorically or whether Juan, you want to actually say something.
Yeah, I don't know if it's one or one, but certainly these are important issues, you know, and the Department of Health, you know, the Department of Health is the one in charge, and H&H are the one in charge of the distribution of these vaccines once they get here from the state to the federal government. And certainly we are going to bring this to our superiors, principals' attention, no? Okay, and the issue that David was mentioning.
Okay, and we have a great question from John Lawrence. I'm going to read it, but it's from him. What are the top 3 policies that New York City or New York State can implement to address inequality? How do progressives on Staten Island better organize to push for these policies? I would just going to open this up, as long as you, at least I'm going to try to, if you can just be courteous and not interrupt others, but you know, there are many of you who would have an answer to that question. Anyone want to start? Well, so I didn't have to open it up. All right.
And I could say something, Barbara.
Sure.
In legislation in the state, healthcare bill that has not passed. We have a supermajority now in the Senate. And if we can lobby our senators to not just be co-sponsors of the bill, but champion the bill, that's one way we can start in creating equity in the healthcare system. So everybody has an opportunity, and there's not this VIP treatment that, and your healthcare is not based on how much money you have, but you know, if you're sick, everyone gets treated the same way. So we can there.
Can I ask, so when you say your state senators, so that's either
all of them,
Diane,
Lanza, Diane
Sabino?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are
I don't think Lanza has signed on to the bill, but I say a lot of everybody.
Well, or it has Diane Sabino signed on.
She was a co-sponsor at one point, but the last session, no. So now that we're here, we can get her to kind of push her to co-sponsor. But not just co-sponsor, because we have people that co-sponsor the bill but don't champion the bill. We need them to get their senator colleagues to get on board as well. And I know they're going to say that there's not enough money in the system, there's not enough money to pay for it. Well, we have to create new revenue. And if we're talking about closing this deficit, which is going to be very, very large, and I don't know when we're going to get money, we have to look for new income streams, and we have to start exploring a wealth tax. And I know in the budget that just passed, Cuomo did put a wealth tax in there, but it was like 100 million over, people make over 100 million. It was something that wasn't realistic. A 1 billion, it was something that didn't really touch a lot of wealthy people. We need a realistic wealth tax in order to close this budget gap.
You don't want to close it by just cutting off all the services that everybody needs? I don't know why not. Okay, anybody else like to give an answer in addition to Selena to that question?
I can.
Karen?
I've been happy about the extensions on the eviction moratoriums, but the problem is that those folks will still have to pay all of that back rent. So we have a lot of neighbors who are accruing tens of thousands of dollars in back rent. So what's needed is a comprehensive city program or federal program, really, where people can receive aid to pay that back rent from the government, and a disaster case management program to go along with that, to empower social services to help people in their own communities to access aid for back rent. And then in terms of what can we do, I'd say work with the great organizations across New York City that are addressing systemic racism and advocating for the big solutions like Medicare for all.
Barbara, can I just add something to what Karen said, and I'll echo her on canceling rent and providing grants for folks to pay that back rent. When the housing courts reopen, there's going to be a flood of cases, and the housing court is difficult for folks to navigate without counsel. There is a great program called Universal Access to Counsel in New York City where people are able to get an attorney appointed to them, but it's being rolled out over the course of 5 years, zip code by zip code. And there's so many people that have been excluded because they don't live in the right zip codes. There's actually a bill pending before this New York City Council that there's going to be a hearing this Monday at noon before the General Welfare Committee to expand that to all zip codes immediately. So everybody is able to get access to a free attorney when they're facing eviction instead of folks who are just in certain zip codes.
Thank you. And can I point out that Stephanie Ward has put in the chat, I assume this is with regard to what Selena was talking about, but she gives a website which you can all go look at for how to get legislators on board to champion a package of bills. And the package of bills are meant to increase revenue streams, not just balance the budget, but to set us up for the future. So if anyone's interested, their website is in the chat.
I would like to add something.
Sure.
In general, this is a perfect time, that because in the Albany, the Democrats have supermajority right now, and not only that, but it's a group of very progressive legislators, recently elected, who are willing to push for these additional measures, to address the issue of inequality. At the local level, at the city level, there is also a group of legislators who are willing to work on this issue. The big problems to resolve, is the budget. Right now they are expecting approximately between $1 and $2 billion with the new relief packages coming to and also some money to recover from the expenses during COVID. So we're talking about $3 billion just for the city. At the state level, probably they're waiting about another $4 or $5 billion. Is that enough? The governor have talked about a deficit of $11 billion, a few months ago. So, however, what are the alternatives for this? They have reduced taxes on the rich, and people making over a certain amount of money, and that's part of one of the items that's being discussed, about how to increase taxation of certain areas. We need to deal with the issue of living wage. $15 is very good, to have it around, but we need to talk about living wage. We need to have a better controlling of the rent. Healthcare. That has to be, addressed. So it's a number of areas.
Thank you, Juan. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. If there's anybody that has another question that they want to ask, now would be the time.
We also want to get back to Eileen to just make sure that she has the people for the nominating committee.
Okay, as I think there are 3 people who, at least unless I missed some, but I think there are 3, and you wanted 5. So if 2 more people would like to volunteer to be on the nominating committee.
There was someone, I think there were a couple of messages in the chat. So I think before
there were, but I count, there's Joanna, David, myself.
And Dave Polchuk, and also Sally.
Oh, then I think you have your 5, do you?
Beautiful. If there's anybody else who's interested, it'd be someone else.
You have Joanna?
David Jones, David Polchuk, Barbara Kent, and Sally Jones.
So you have your 5.
Your 5. Thank you.
You should have 5 cocktails tonight.
Yes.
All right, anybody with a question? Then I'm going to thank you all for participating. Thank you for all the information that you provided to people. This has really been a wonderful use of this afternoon. And I really do, we all thank you very, very much. Everybody, please stay well and healthy. And Eileen, share the cocktails.
So definitely.